Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again to our South Carolina Low Country project here in the neighborhood of Ion. Today we're getting a roof over our heads. A nice metal roof that's pre-finished in a beautiful red. They call it a 5V crimp. Also, the Andersen folks have delivered the windows and the French doors, so we'll be showing you how those are going in place. And we've got western red cedar, lots of it. We're trimming out the house as well as putting on the clapboards. Stick around, it's good to have you home again. Hey, so these are Andersen's French wood doors, which are, well, the opening here is 4 by 8, and it's really a beautiful set of doors because essentially all the work's been done in the factory. They're clad on the outside and on the inside so that you don't have to worry about priming and painting on the inside. The glass is one monolithic piece of thermal glass, but it's also low E glass, and it's high impact glass, so it just doesn't get any better in hurricane areas and the like. And one of these doors will set you back, I think, about $1,500. But let's talk with Kevin. Hi.
Hi, Bob.
And Russell's here too. Okay, so one of the first things you have to do when you bring it out of the box is to get your flange in, and you just finished putting that one in. What does the flange do for you?
Flange acts as a water repellent along the exterior, and also on the windows. That's where you fasten the window through.
But you do not fasten through this flange to the siding, to the sheathing rather. This doesn't receive any nails at all, right?
Not on the French door installation.
On the windows it does.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
We fasten through the jambs and through the header.
Let's talk about what preparation has already been done here for the for installing the door. I mean, I remember we used to put lead down, and this is that bituthane, isn't it?
Yes, we've used lead, Bob, for years and years on this. We've gone to bituthane the last couple of years. You can bend it in 3 directions like this. You can see it under here,
yeah,
where it's bent in 3 directions, and it doesn't tear like lead does.
Mm-hmm.
So we can bend it in 3 directions, stops any water that drives up under the door and comes back out again.
So that's at the threshold, and you've got the house wrap all around the openings. Why do you still need to put in a 15-pound felt paper spline around?
I guess that's kind of my safety blanket, Bob. It's learning building in Nantucket for years and years, just trying to keep water out, that having a spline system really works well. After that flange fits on the top here, we have this spline that stops any water that infiltrates from the siding or the casing.
Or the casing.
There, and runs it right back out of the building.
Right, okay. All right, well, is it a 2-man job? Can I give you a hand?
I sure hope so.
It's heavy, huh? All right.
Pretty good.
Now this gets fastened from the inside.
That's correct. And actually from the outside, through these holes in the jamb.
Okay.
There's some holes here.
So the flange on the outside keeps the door plumb from the in and out perspective.
That's correct.
And now the shims that are being put in there, what do? They just hold it?
They hold it when we fasten the screws through, Bob. They just keep the jamb from spreading out.
Exactly.
We try to get it centered in the opening, so we want just as much reveal on each side.
Now the screws that go into the jack studs there, you've got some here. They go in from this side?
I do. I'm going to put one in now.
Good. How many go in there?
We get 4 on each side and 3 across the top. I'm going to use this utility knife to score the tie back.
The business of putting the splines in place is something that goes back a long time in construction.
And I'll use this 30 weight paper.
And so the idea is to put it under the tie back where you just cut it.
My dad's favorite saying was, think like water. So
think like water?
Think like water. So if we just think how water runs down a building, that's the way you should install it. You don't want it to get caught and run behind anything. We've got it installed, then we'll seal that joint with Tyvek tape for air infiltration.
And tack a couple of nails on it.
That's correct.
Okay, well let's take a look at the door from the inside, because I know that you can also adjust these doors laterally if you have to.
The hinge adjustment is one of the great features of Andersen doors.
Now, if the doors at any point bind a little bit like that, they're a little bit hinge bound, and if you have too much of a gap like that, the adjustment is right in here, right, Kevin?
That's correct, Bob.
At each of the hinges.
We have 2 set screws and a Allen screw that sets back in there that'll move the door in and out and up and down if need be.
Okay, and that should do it. Good.
It's
Nice
great.
job.
Coming up next, the house gets a metal roof, so stick around.
With us now is Dick Voss, who's the president of the Metal Roofing Alliance. And Dick, this is a pretty quick and beautiful way to put these roofs down. What's this one called?
This is McElroy Metal's 5V crimp.
5D crimp, and that's because it's crimped 5 times, 2 at either side and once in the middle.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the ones on this side will overlap these here 2 crimps.
Okay, and this is a steel roof, but there's more to it than just rolled steel, right?
That's correct. This is a light gauge steel product that's coated with a galvalume coating and then painted with a Kynar or Hylar paint coating. That's what gives it its color.
Now, in the olden days, when you saw a roof like that, it was painted with red lead, and it was usually on a barn roof very often. And you still see
and
those.
residentially, you see that a lot in different parts of the country,
Especially
particularly here in the southeast.
And also in the northeast, in Maine, where you have a lot of snow loads, because this roof will shed the snow really quickly.
Right.
Now, tell me about the cost of a roof like this. Is it much more expensive than asphalt shingles?
Typically, a 5E crimp is more expensive than an asphalt shingle roof. However, you'll get 4 or 5 times more life out of it.
Yeah, it's a lifetime roof, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. There's also other advantages, though. From the point of view of conservation, I understand that this is usually made out of recycled metal, and it can be recycled once again.
That's correct.
Whereas asphalt shingles, unfortunately, we put a lot of those into the landfills every year.
That's correct. There's about 14 billion pounds going into landfills every year of old asphalt shingle.
Right. Now, do they make metal roofing products in other configurations besides just the sheets?
Yes, it's available in all different types of roofing, including concrete tiles, shake, slates, Spanish tile, a lot of different types of
A lot of
metal
different
roofing.
looking shingles and the like, yeah.
That's correct.
All right, well, let's talk about the installation here, because this looks like it's just regular caulking well, no, it's silicone, yeah.
It's a silicone caulk that they're putting down in the in between the 2 V's.
And that is primarily as a sealer or also as an adhesive?
Primarily as a sealant.
And then after they've put down a bunch of these sheets is when they'll start fastening it with these awesome looking screws.
Correct. These fasteners are color coordinated with the metal roof. They also have a grommeted washer that prevents any type of leakage around the fastener.
Water infiltration, right. Dick, what's the recommended pattern for fastening?
With this particular profile, it's 12 inches on center, 16 inches up the slope.
12 inches on center, 16 inches
on center,
up the slope. I see. So that you're creating a 12 by 16 kind of grid. Now, how does a roof like this perform in hurricane winds?
This particular roof system, as well as actually all metal roof systems, perform very well in high wind conditions, especially hurricanes.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the red is the perfect choice for this house. Now, when you come to a situation like here where you have a valley, is this just a piece of that stock that's been bent over and trimmed, or what is this?
No, that's a standard flashing detail that all manufacturers offer.
I see. So you order some of this stock, and it's versatile. You can use it in any valley, in any pitch?
That's correct.
Great. Okay. Well, that makes the job a lot easier. Well, tell us, what are some of the other advantages of using a metal roof?
From some of the environmental issues around the country, like fire and hail and high wind, snow loads, metal outperforms any other type of roofing product.
Fire in particular, I would think, in places like Oakland out in California, where you've had so many tragic fires, that would be a real good reason for having a metal roof.
That's correct.
Well, Dick, thanks for coming out.
All right. Thank you.
When we come back, we'll be using western red cedar to trim out the windows.
Cuts nice, doesn't it?
This is great stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're about to start trimming out the house here under the porch, and this is all western red cedar that's pre-primed. It comes out here from our friends at Weyerhaeuser, and one of the interesting things is that it's finger jointed, which means that all the flaws that might have been there are taken out and the wood is put back together so that you get very strong, very stable, wonderful stuff to work with. All the carpenters on the job are very excited. Now, let's talk a little bit about what the objective is here. We have clapboard siding and we have full two-by stock for trim. And what we're about to do is show you how the corner boards get put in, how the trim, what we call in New England the grounds, get put in the inside corners, how we case out the window, and then how we put the clapboards out. And Kevin, you've already got one piece ready to go here.
That's correct.
And let's go ahead and put it in. Now this is what's called the ground, where we came from, kind of. But very often in some construction, clapboards will just be butted into the inside corner and they'll allow the painting contractors to come along and caulk. But this is the best way to do it.
It gives you a real spot for the clapboard to stop. Clapboard's not meant to butt together at an interior 90-degree angle.
Exactly. And we're just hand nailing it, but we'll be shooting some of the rest of it. Now, the other thing that before we get too far along with the trim I wanted to talk about, this is the narrow line window from Andersen, which is, again, design-wise, a really good choice for this house because it looks like a turn-of-the-century, 2/2 window, which is what was very common in this kind of architecture in the late 1800s. But it is, state-of-the-art in terms of the year 2000. Everything is clad, everything is pre-finished. There's hardly any kind of finish work that has to be done to it. And the flange is perforated, and this is how you install it. You have the perforations in the flange so that you can put your nails in every 6 inches or so. And as opposed to the French doors that we were looking at earlier, this is the correct way to put it in. And of course, we like to put in the felt paper splines all around the thing, even though we have the Tyvek on. And I was forgetting to mention another interesting detail that's used down here in the south. This is flashing that gets placed at the bottom. You see it's already in place here. So that tucks in under where the clapboards will come down. The porch roof hasn't been put down yet, but this is a good touch. Even under a porch roof like we have here, it's a nice touch because it does ensure that you're going to have a very dry bottom there. What's next?
The corner boards, Bob. Let's put them together.
All right. Now these are also being made out of 2-by stock, right?
That's correct. 2x6.
It's a pleasure to nail through this red cedar. It really is nice.
Beautiful, beautiful stock. You'll really appreciate it when we put it up and see how straight it is.
Okay. The reason why we're using such heavy stock is that the clapboards that we're going to be putting on here are wide enough that you need this full width, otherwise they would project out. You'll see that in a minute. All right, well now we'll go from corner boards to talking about casing this window. And again, we're using this heavy stock, but one thing that's a good idea when you've got windows like this that are attached with a flange, one thing you can do is you can take your casing stock and through a table saw rip off a blade width, just like that, so that when you apply it over that flange, it sits perfectly flat and flush. If you didn't do that, you might end up with the casing stock just a little bit at a cant, just a little bit at an angle out like that, which doesn't look as good. And Kevin, what about the apron?
Well, this is our windowsill, Bob. This is our 4x4 Western red cedar. We've beveled the front of it for water runoff, and it'll fit up underneath there like that.
Right.
You can see how we continue the sill. We still got some work to do to this one. We need to add a couple of important things. We need to add a drip kerf right here, which is really just a blade run through the table saw, so any water that runs off here catches there and drips. It doesn't run back. And then we're going to put a notch back in here for the siding to fit up into. And we're going to run that through the saw now.
All right, so this has been prepared, and we can put it into place, and we're going to be installing it using these 3-inch screws. And Kevin's just driving them right in. Great. And what's nice is we've got the notch already pre-cut so that when it's time to put the claps in place, that notch allows the clapboards to go in neatly instead of having to notch out the clapboard and have it sit on top of the apron. But now we're ready for our casings. Got the header ready?
Yes, sir.
Learn more about installing red cedar trim and clapboards at bobvila.com.
Now, because we're putting the claps on the wall, but we don't have the decking yet on top of the joist, we've kind of gone off this 1/2 inch of plywood, and then we got one clapboard down there as a guide, and then we can place the first one right where it goes. Right there. And then we're using these hot-dipped they're not electroplated, they're hot-dipped galvanized nails. The electroplated can react with the cedar and cause a little bit of bleeding. And we've already marked off where the studs are along the wall. What's the exposure here to the weather?
6 inches to the weather, Bob.
6 inches to the weather. We've marked the first exposure right there where it goes. Now we can start using the spacer, and that's our exposure guide. And so we put it on the bottom of the last clapboard that went in. Let me get this in here, right? And that is our little gauge, and you want to check on both sides before you start putting a nail in. But now, I'm going to let Kevin proceed as soon as I get this nail in. I want to welcome Craig Holder from Weyerhaeuser. Hi, Craig. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bob.
Tell me some of the attributes of Western Red Cedar. I mean, it's a product I've loved to use, and it's a product that's very popular in New England in old clapboard houses.
One of the beauties about Western Red Cedar is that it contains natural oils that acts as a preservative
Right.
to help the wood resist wood decay and insect infestation.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be treated with any kind of chemicals or anything. It's just naturally in there.
That's correct.
And it is identified with the high end of the building market, though, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it sure is.
Yeah. It's got stability and it's got curb appeal.
Lays flat, stays straight. Contractors and installers like to work with the product.
Right. Now, this particular profile is one that's bigger than what we're used to seeing in New England. What's the size of these clapboards?
This is a 3/4 by 8 bevel.
And is this something that's more popular down here in the Southeast?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, we're really enjoying working with it, but, you know, one question that everybody wants to ask is sustainability. Is it responsible to be using cedar? Are we wiping out the great cedar forests?
No, sir. Western Red Cedar is a renewable resource. Weyerhaeuser works extremely hard at becoming wise stewards to our forest lands.
So it's a sustainable resource.
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks for coming out. We're running out of time. Come home again next time.
When we'll be hanging beautiful cedar garage doors, and we'll install an Andersen snap-in sash skylight.
Till then, I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again. For lots of information and resources for your home improvement project, check out my website at bobvila.com.